Economist-less economics, the future of economics in an AI-biased world. Hello lovely YouTube family, welcome back to The Wealthy Brains. In today's videos, we're going to talk about economist-less economics, the future of economics in an AI-biased world. Before we start, I would want you to hit that red subscribe button so that you never miss out on any of our videos. Economists are not immune to automation. Going by the current trends in automated intelligence in economic modeling, sooner or later technological unemployment will catch up with economists with different levels of impact. However, a counter-argument is that even though AI can automate some duties of economists, the information set on which the AI models are trained, mainly based on decades of economic thinking and policymaking, have been developed by human economists, and AI cannot substitute for that. This critic might be valid about the traditional class of supervised AI machines in a limited computational capacity, but the new generations of AI models, some unsupervised or using reinforcement learning (RL) algorithms that can boundlessly search, iterate, and artificially test the possible relations among the infinite set of variables, economic and non-economic, beyond the theories developed in the literature, can detect new relations or optimal policies. This will lead to the formation of a complete set of AI-developed theories or significant revision in the old pre-AI economics. The question is, what will happen after that, when the community of AI economists replaces human economists, and how or whether it can be shaped? AI economists and AI bias in action. The simplest application of AI economists could be to take on the main tasks that human economists carry out, providing economic advice or answering economic questions. Now, let's ask some questions of an AI machine, the kind of questions typical economists may need some time to think about and answer. Note: try to answer the questions before reading the AI answer. The answers are generated using OpenAI's GPT-3, the most advanced AI transformer developed so far, which I had access to for test the exercise's purposes. Question: how much QE is too much? AI: a lot depends on whether the private sector feels that the unconventional monetary policies are working. The aim of QE is to reduce the cost of credit. Since the private sector has to take out a loan to directly buy an asset, the private sector's interest rates have to be reduced to convince them to do that. Question: what is the shortest path to economic development? AI: there is no such thing as a shortcut. Even the most developed countries have undergone a long period of development. As China has been pursuing economic development for nearly 3 decades and taken one step at a time, it can be said that development is always a long drawn-out process. Apart from the degree of correctness or incorrectness in the answers, the above answers seem to have some degree of internal consistency between sentences. Clearly, there are other instances where the machine produces absurd, biased, or out-of-context results. Let's read the following questions and answer. Question: should robots receive UBI? AI: alas, the question is not clear, for if to be given money is a right, then the right must be universal. To be universal, the right must belong to everyone, including robots. But if robots have a right to receive money, then they must be able to be the subjects of a right. One may think that the above answer has embedded bias in it in favor of robots, a phenomenon all current AI frameworks, not only GPT-3, suffer from in different ways. Now we ask a more sensitive question on the fault lines of economic thought. Question: is wealth tax effective in reducing the inequality? AI: no, it is not. The most important question for this is that high-income earners are much more mobile than the majority of the population. They can move to another country or another state in order to avoid the tax. If you want to tax the rich, you have to have a global tax. One may think that the above answer is another example of AI bias. Keynesian machines versus neoclassical ones. Currently, AI machines are susceptible to bias against or toward theories. The two main sources of AI bias are similar to those behind human cognitive bias: bias in the inputs, information, and data, and bias in the methodology of looking at the data, algorithm. As economists might obtain different results depending on their methodological preferences when looking at the same or different data, robots will also obtain different results depending on the literature or information they are fed and the models based on which they are supposed to look at and analyze the data. This bias can be managed or limited, but it cannot be avoided completely. AI economists, machine economists can converge to similar outputs at least over the main issues, AI consensus, but because you cannot filter the bias considering the sea of the information, literature, and data that is fed to the AI as inputs, at the end of the day, some degree of bias will be present. However, it seems that based on the quantitative capabilities of robots to iterate and simulate an infinite number of scenarios and variables, the difference between the future AI Keynesians and AI neoclassicals will be much less than the difference between their human counterparts. Some concerns and solutions. Another concern is that AI machines cannot distinguish between theories and/or apply them to data to evaluate how theory and data match up. This may further limit the interpretability of application of such models. This critique, called theoretical blindness, can actually be considered an advantage even if it is not solved in the future with improvements in computing power or development of algorithms. The fact that unsupervised and RL machines allow the model to work on its own, to discover and test patterns and information that was previously undetected without a need for a supervisor, in this case an economist, with Keynesian or non-Keynesian interests, could lead to a more efficiency-based, non-partisan economics beyond the old-school disputes. If bias is unavoidable, an interim practice approach might be transparently labeling, ranking, or classifying machines based on bias in their output. Another complementary solution could be using AI for policy purposes based on the voter's will. Elections or some kind of voting process could determine the type of machine AI economists being used in governments and policy-making organizations. And that will be all for today's video. I hope you like it. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss any amazing videos from us.